What's going on, everybody? James here from Artificial Entertainment, and welcome to another Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. And today we're going to be taking a look at ranged damage systems. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so we have here a third-person project. Now, this is the same project that we made the Melee Trace video, and the only thing that we're going to be using from that is going to be the interface. Now, it's a very simple blueprint interface, so I'll show you guys how to be able to set all that up, so don't worry, I'm not going to leave you without any information. Now, let's first talk types of range damage. Now, realistically, when it comes to game design, there are three main pieces of code that are going to cover the five main principles of firearms. Now, for those of you who don't know, the five main principles of firearms are single shot, which is basically covering your grenade launchers and crossbows, anything that requires a full reload before being able to be fired again. Then you also have your single action, which requires some sense of rechambering or recharging before being able to be fired again, such as your pump action shotguns or bolt action rifles. And the last three are the more common ones, such as the semi-automatic, where it'll fire as often as you pull the trigger, burst fire, which will fire off 3 to 4 rounds per trigger pull depending on the weapon, and then of course everybody's favorite fully automatic, which basically pull trigger, empty clip. Very simple. Now, the three main code parts that are going to control these are, now these are just things that what I call them. But the first one is going to be a single call with reset. Basically, it'll call it once and it won't allow it to be called again until a certain value has been met. You can use montage values or delays. I'll show you guys a few different ways you can set this up. The next one is going to be for the burst fire system. This one is realistically for burst fire specifically, as it does fire off the desired amount of rounds and then allows you to be able to fire off again after a short delay, just like how you would have with a normal burst fire rifle. And lastly, the fully automatic system is going to be basically a dynamic system that you can use a single variable to control the fire rate, so this way you can actually have multiple weapons doing different fire rates, but all running it through the same code piece, just to help minimize how much is actually being run or how much code has to be stored within your packed game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at how to be able to set up the single call with reset. That's where we'll start. So we're going to go in and we're going to open up our blueprint for our third person character. And as you can see here, we have the trace code that we made for the Melee system in the last video right here. But what we're going to do is we're going to find an empty spot, right click, and we're going to make a new custom event. And this one we're going to call this Fire Ranged Weapon. Now, you could use the new enhanced input action system for this. There is a way that you can call it so that way it triggers or if pressed, but I haven't actually found a great way to be able to do it with the new system. The old one still seems to be most effective, and that might just be because of the way that I'm looking at it, because I'm looking at it from, an old school developer's perspective, but I don't know. If somebody finds a better way, please let me know. I'm always down for new information, but we're just going to go with the old school way for right now. So now that we have this here, what we can do is we're going to pull off of this. And again, so it's because if it's a reset, we need a do once node. And this reset is going to be what allows us to be able to call this back whenever we want. And what we're going to set up first is going to be more of a semi-automatic style. So we're going to go off of completed and we're going to get a line trace by channel. Now, to be able to get a proper trace, the best way to do it is to just get your follow camera, pull off of it, and get world transform. And you want to make sure to get this one. Sometimes it'll go down to the message one. Just make sure under transformation, get world transformation, and then we can right click and split the struct pin. This way it'll give us the location and rotation, which we are going to need both. So we're just going to go ahead and we'll plug the location into the start. We'll take the rotation and get the forward vector. And then we're going to pull off of that, and we're going to get a multiplication node. Turn the bottom pin here, we're going to right click it, convert pin into a float single precision, and change this value to something like 1200. This is basically going to be the distance in which it travels. So you can also right click and promote this to a variable. So this way you can have something that'll actually be like the shot distance capacity. But we'll go ahead and just highlight all of this, pull it back, pull off of the location, get an add node, and this way we can add this and the multiplication together, and set that as the endpoint. Now we're going to go to the draw debug type and set it to for duration, just so that way we can see our trace. And we're also going to go ahead and we're going to throw in an animation. So I'm going to grab my ranged weapon, because currently I'm just going to use one that's attached to the character. And again, just like in the last video, I'll show you guys how to do this with a not attached weapon. Although it is the exact same way, I'll just go through it so that way you don't have to go back and watch the end of another video to get the full information. So we're going to pull off the ranged weapon, and we're just going to go play animation. Now, generally, if you also have like a montage you want to play, something like, the character reacting to recoil or something, you can use a montage as well. I would usually go montage and then animation, or just make sure that they're, playing at the same time, or maybe a slight delay if you need some sort of delay, like if something's happening sooner than the other. But I don't have a montage, so I'm just going to use play animation. So if you guys have it, this is where you would put it, just somewhere either before or after. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to got a firing animation here that I've already set up. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to play the animation, because no matter what we do, we're going to want to make sure to do a do once reset. Now, just talking about the montage as well, because we are in the do once reset, I'll go ahead and I'll just get a montage, play montage node here. Now, we need the skeletal mesh component here. But what you can do is you can use the on blend out, or you can use a notify and just call it through like the animation blueprint. So you can create a notify in here, so that way, like, if it's like a long reload and doesn't quite line up to where the blend out point is and you can't really get the setting to work properly, you can just use an anim notify. But this is where you would control when you can fire again. So if you're using something like a single shot or a single action where it requires an animation to be completed before being able to fire again, just so you can have that nice fluid look to your firing system, this is how you would add that in, just using a montage and then a notify or the on blend out. And then you would hook this into the reset. But since we're doing a standard semi-automatic system, I'm just going to pull off and we're going to get a delay. Now this delay can actually, you can pull off this, I'll just promote it to a variable, call it fire rate. Because we're going to use this in a couple of different ways, but for right now, the delay here is going to set the fire rate. So this is how often we can pull the trigger and fire again. Now, from my experience, I found that around 0.2 is a pretty standard number. Anything beyond that, you're going to be delaying it too much, and anything under that, you're going to be delaying it, probably not by enough. So, I mean, maybe like a value of 1.5, like if you play in between the 0.1 and 0.2 values, maybe. But 0.2 is always a good starting point, and we'll just take completed, plug it into the reset like this. Then we'll just go ahead and just kind of line these up really quickly so it looks a little bit better. And now from here, all we need to do is just make sure to call our event. Now for me, I have, whenever I press the right mouse button, or I'm sorry, that's my aiming, the left mouse button, it's just checking to see if weapon drawn is true and what my active weapon is, which right now is just either ranged or melee. It's just a simple enumeration that whenever I either pull out my sword or pull out my pistol, it'll basically set it whether or not it's ranged or melee. So if it's melee, it's going in and just doing this, which is the animation that you guys saw play in the melee attack video. If you watch that one, this is basically all it is. So for range though, what we're going to do is, rather than setting all up the code here, we're just going to pull off and we're going to go fire ranged weapon. So that's the reason why we put the do once in there, is because this way it'll only call it once, and it'll allow us to not fire too quickly. Now normally also, just so you guys know, you would put like an aim check if you're trying to make it so that way the character can only fire while aiming, or if you make it so that way they're able to hip fire, you maybe want to set some sort of value for firing. So there are some values you might want to set based off of your system, but they're very, very small things, very, very small changes, just to make sure you have everything that you're going to need. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just click on play really quickly, minimize, and I'll show you the system. So now you can see I've got my pistol out. If I go ahead and I just aim and I press the button, you can see the animation is playing and the line trace is happening. And because of where the line trace is, it's always kind of happening from this kind of like center focal point here. So if I just move, it'll always be in the same spot when we set up a crosshair. But as you saw, I can only fire as fast as the reset would allow me to. Now, if I go to this fire rate option, and I set this to 0.02, for example, just a very, very low value, something that's it's gonna reset very quickly, right? I can almost spam this to almost an automatic fire. So that's where this fire rate really comes into play, because if I set it back to 0.2 and I spam the button the exact same way, we can go ahead and just aim, and you can see that now there's a difference. The line traces are the best thing to go by. The animation, or the Niagara system that I'm playing, is a little excessive, but I wanted an animation so that way you guys could see. But if you look, I'm spamming the button, but I can literally only trace every 0.2 seconds. And again, the same system would work if we took out the delay, put in a montage, and then had it, reset at the either blend out point or off of a notify, you get the same result. So this is basically just doing it off a delay, so you can set a fire reset rate for any semi-automatic weapons. Now, in order to be able to actually register that something has been hit though, we now need to be able to work with that interface. So I'm going to show you guys that really quickly. And again, it's a very, very simple interface. So I have my tutorial assets folder here, and we've got this damage interface. Now in here, I've created one function It's just called apply damage with 0 inputs, 0 outputs. It's literally just a replacement for the event any damage. That's the only thing. So we're going to take the out hit result and we're going to break the hit result. Now also make sure that you add the interface into your player character as well as your enemy, because we're going to go off of the hit actor and make sure does implement interface is active. So we want to make sure that the damage interface is applied to that particular enemy that we're attacking, because we don't want to try and damage a wall, basically. Well, I mean, unless you're using a collision system, but this is a more basic system where we're just trying to attack enemies with different variable fire types. So as long as that is true, so we'll actually, we'll take this off here. We just slide this back because we want it to be able to play the animation right after. We don't want to delay that. What we're going to do is put the branch up here, plug that in there. So this way, if the does implement interface is true, then we're going to pull off the hit actor and apply damage, get the interface message. And then we're going to go off of here, plug it right into the delay. If it's false though, we're just going to go right into the delay and reset things so that way we can fire off again. Because we don't want to kind of make it so we can't fire again. We just want to make sure that we're not applying damage to something that we're not actually trying to apply damage to. So we'll go ahead and compile and save. And if I hit play, bring out my weapon here. And if I hit, whoops, and actually, there we go. You can see, it'd be better once I actually have some crosshairs in, but you can see that it's actually playing the animation for every hit. So now let's talk about burst fire. So burst fire is actually really easy as well. But you want to change a few things. The first one is we're going to take out this do once node, but we're going to leave this pin link up here because this is actually going to make it easier for what we actually need here in a minute. But the first thing we want to do is go off of the fire ranged weapon. And we want to set timer by event. Now, for those of you wondering, also just really quickly, how to have multiple, like each one of these systems in place, what I would generally recommend is having some sort of like system for burst fire, automatic fire, and single shot. Because realistically, each one of these codes are going to have slight variations, but anything that is of those firing types will be able to be easily run through this system. Now, I'm sure through use of enums and branches and things like that, you could have some sort of switch off and have it all running through the same code. But I just want to advise that, realistically, you might have to set up 3 different versions of it, but it's realistically copy paste, make these adjustments for each one. So it's very easy. And the only thing that you might need to do in addition would be to just create like an enumeration added into your weapon struct of the weapon's firing type. Or if you have select fire, set up a simple, button that'll change based off of what the firing type is. So you might need to do some, a little extra to be able to get different sorts of firing systems. So this way the system will know what is actually supposed to be happening. But after here, the set timer by event, what we're going to do is we're going to set the time to 0.2. And then we're going to press N on our keyboard and we're going to left click to get a do N or a do number of times. And this is going to be what actually controls the burst fire. So we're going to set this from 0 to 4. And then we're going to take the counter and we're going to pull off of it and see if it is equal to 4. And then we're just going to put a quick branch in here. We'll kind of take all of this here and we'll pull it back, just give us a little bit more room, pull all that down. All right. So off of the exit here, this is going to be what it runs however many number of times. Now we also need to make another custom event here, just because it's honestly not entirely necessary. It's just easier. And this is something you're going to probably use for both the, well, no, not probably, I do use. So, I mean, unless you find a different way, but I definitely use for both the burst and the automatic system. But we're just going to go stop firing. And then we're just going to kind of put this up here. We're going to take the return value and we're going to clear and invalidate timer by handle. And we're going to plug this into here like so. And we're going to pull this down and pull this back because we also want to take this and we're going to plug this into the reset. So that way it's able to reset itself. And we can actually delete this pin link here. I forgot about that we're doing this way, so we actually don't need that. And we're also going to take the delay off at the end here because we don't need this either. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our branch here. So if our counter is equal to 4, it means that it's fired off 3 shots because it's going to cycle through once and count it as 1. So after that, it's going to be another one and another one. So technically it's going to be 4 to be able to fire off 3 shots. So what we're going to do is if it is equal to 4, we're going to want to reset things. But if it's false, we're going to want to let it keep going. And if it's true, we're just going to call the reset. And if it's true, we're just going to go off and get the stop firing function. Because this way, if it's equal to 4, we'll be able to go through, stop firing, and be able to fire again. Now, one thing I do recommend though is that in between this and where it actually is going to clear and reset everything, put a delay. This way you can actually make sure that by the time you're done firing, it will go ahead and, make it so you can't just rapid fire, press the button, and it gives it some sort of a stopper from spamming. Because now if we go ahead and we compile and we save, we press play. If I go ahead and I aim my weapon here, you'll see that it fires off 3 times. And I can hit all 3 of them with these shots. So you can use this burst fire system for multiple things. Like I said, you can set it if you want to make it so that way it fires 5 times or 4 times. Just set it if it's equal to 5. So now we'll go ahead and take out the weapon. And you can see that we got 4 different traces. So you can set the number to whatever you want. You can set it to, run as many times as you want. It really doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you have something checking to see once the counter is finished, to be able to reset everything, which is going to stop the timer as well as, do this. Now, the last version of the system here is going to be the automatic system, which is still going to use the set timer by event. So we're going to keep all of this in here. Oh, we're going to take the delay off here and we're going to plug this in just like this. And we're also going to take the do end off as well. And we're going to plug in right to the line trace by channel. And then what we're going to do at the end here, so we're keeping the stop firing code here. So what we're going to do is just go to the event graph here. And the same button that you're using to be able to fire off on the weapon. So like, we got this here that's checking to see if our weapon's drawn, what our active weapon is off of the released, or if you're using the new enhanced input system, it would just be off of completed, I believe. You're using started. If you're using the triggered option, I will say you're going to run into some issues because it's never going to stop. So like you can set up the resets and have it fire as often as you would want it to, but as long as someone's pressing the button, it's going to keep firing. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really like the new system. But from here, we can just go stop firing, call that in just like that. And now if we compile and save, and just to kind of point out this here, so the set timer by event is now going to be the thing that controls the fire rate. So the fire rate here, we can take this and plug this in. Because like I said, the automatic fire can be controlled by a single variable. And this is that variable. It's the only difference. So now if we go compile, save, and we just play, I can now just literally just spam over and over and over and over and over. And you can see that the animation plays all the way through. So that's something to do with the Niagara particle system. I would probably want to cut it off early or delay how quickly the arm goes down, something like that. But essentially the traces stop right when they should, they hit right when they should, and they interact the way that they should. And each one is just using either an automatic, burst, or single shot system. Alright, so the last thing for me to show you is just really quickly how to be able to get it so that way your animation is going to play on the weapon if it's a pickup weapon. Because when it comes to weapons, realistically, you're only going to be playing the animations that are actually on the weapon that you're using. So you're not really going to have to worry too much about montages and actual code being run through it. It's just making sure that the animation can play accordingly. So to be able to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to get our player weapons, and this is going to be the same one that if you guys have followed the multi-weapon system tutorial, where I showed you guys how to be able to set up a nice player weapon variable that's mapped so you can have multiple things. If you pull off it, find the weapon that you're looking for, and then if we go ahead and just type in ranged, because that's what I'm looking for, and if you're using the weapon struct, you would just need to right click to split the struct and get that actor reference, because then from here, we're going to cast to weapon master. So what this is going to do is essentially it's going to cast it to the weapon master, but it's going to get the version of that, so the child actor essentially, and be able to allow it to play the animation. Because realistically, we can't plug an actor reference into a play animation. And we also can't call references like events off of this either. So in order to be able to make it so it's all going to function accordingly, all we need to do is just get the skeletal mesh component, which is right here. And then we can just plug the skeletal mesh component into the target. And this way now we have exactly the same system, but now with a pickup weapon instead. Now I will say I did some minor adjustments to my animation blueprint off screen because the animation blueprint is going to reference the pickup weapon. However, my picked up weapons are referenced within a completely different variable. So I just did that off screen really quickly. But if we go ahead and just look at really quickly now, if you guys already have the animation blueprint for it set up anyways, we can go ahead and draw our weapon. We can go ahead and aim. And now you can see that we're doing the same traces, and it's just firing off, and it's currently set to the automatic firing system, so I can just sit here and fire all day long, and it plays the animation, and it allows me to be able to use the picked up version of the weapon. And as you can see here, if I go ahead and I just do these traces here, I can sit here and I can damage these guys and make them skip along all day long. And it's very, very easy. And again, these systems are all the same here at the end. The main difference is how the calls are. So you're using a set timer by event with no stopper other than some sort of fire rate variable hooked up into the time. A do once node with the same basic system to be able to turn it into a burst fire system. Now, just remember as well, you wouldn't have to stop firing off of released because you want the reset to be after it completes the full cycle of its burst. So there are a few modifications, but it's pretty much all before the line trace, and it's very easy to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've got more coming out. We're going to have a lot more coming through. I also have a big announcement video that should be out. It's either going to be out when this video comes out or here shortly after. So keep an eye out for that as well. Some exciting stuff. But that's going to cut it out for today, guys. And as always, stay animated.